So think about where your parents are comfortable. Are they comfortable at the cottage? Are they comfortable in the dining room?
Hello, I'm Dan Richards. Welcome to Money Insights. My guest today is Mary Ellen Tomlinson, founder and president of Senior Care Options. This is part of a series of conversations that Mary Ellen and I are having on issues related to elder care. And today we're focusing specifically on having those perhaps difficult conversations. Let me start by asking you, what are we talking about here when we're referring to lifestyle changes due to aging?
There could be mobility problems. So normally you can run up and down the stairs quite well, and all of a sudden you can't because of achy knees. Or a sense of vertigo where you might get a little dizzy. So that's one major change. You might change because of eyesight changes, so that you can't perceive the stairs very well. Or hearing changes, which means that if the doorbell rings and you're in another place in the house, you may not hear it, or you may hear it and then try to run and you can't run, things like that.
So typically it's health-related issues.
Mainly.
Okay. And why is this such a difficult and emotional issue for an awful lot of people?
Well, we're brought up in a culture of self-sufficiency and independence. And so when you get older, some of those qualities that have got you through life so well before are not available to you anymore. You cannot be as independent as you wish, and you can't be as self-sufficient as you wish. So there's a little bit of ego loss there.
So when you're talking to your clients, in some cases parents, in other cases the children of parents, what are, for the children, some of the issues that they run into in raising this with their parents?
Well, the parents might feel a loss of power. There's a family power shift there. So it's really important that you get the parents on side so that they feel that they're a major part of this changing of information and power. So if the parents feel that they're still in control, they're much more likely to cooperate, and they're more likely to be open to some very difficult changes they're going to have to make.
And in your experience, are there some specific approaches that work particularly well in kind of having those tough conversations?
Well, I would plan in your mind before you even approach your parents how you're going to do it, because you want to make sure that it's a very calm atmosphere. So think about where your parents are comfortable. Are they comfortable at the cottage? Are they comfortable in the dining room? Wherever they're comfortable. And make sure it happens at a time when there's not a crisis going on in the family. Frequently, this conversation happens around a crisis, and that's a shame, because if you can do it before the crisis is never so bad because you're prepared for it.
And is there a particular approach in terms of you've got your parents into that familiar, comfortable environment? Is there a particular approach that you found works effectively in raising this?
Well, I always like to speak in other person's terms. So you say to Mom, my need for this information is based on your need for fast action in a crisis. That's a very motivating thought for the person. And they think, wow, if my daughter or my son will really snap to it on my behalf, I'd be happy to share some of that information. I will say, though, in some families, depending on the family culture, people are more likely to share either finances or health, but it's very difficult to share both.
Interesting. And those are the two big areas in your experience,
Those are the huge areas. You have to manage the health and the finances together. They're a team. It's a numbers game, because you need the numbers to deal with the health crises, like I would suggest OHIP numbers in Ontario, and you need some information about money, because if your mom or your dad is in the hospital, who's running the family home while they're there?
Mary Ellen, in your experience, does the process of deciding to have this conversation with your parents, is that typically something that happens over a period of time, or is it more commonly something that comes up suddenly?
If it happens in a crisis, it's sudden. If you have the luxury of having some time, I would suggest take advantage of that luxury. Older people's thought processes are a little bit slower. They don't like to feel rushed, and maybe some of the information that you're asking for is not readily at hand. So if you make a piece of paper list and give it to them, and as they find the information, they can fill in the pieces of information. However, one thing I'd like to say about that list, if you're putting it on your computer, use a large font.
Sure. But if I've got, let's suppose, 8 or 10 items, might it be easier, rather than saying, here are 10 items of information I'm looking for, to maybe start with 2 or 3 and then move from there? Is that something that might work in your experience?
Well, I would suggest you have the whole list, but you might not present the whole list at the time. But at the same time, older people are not really dumb. So they know that the list is there, and if they think, well, give me the whole list, and then when I have a few minutes on Monday after I do this, or on Tuesday after I do that, I'll fill in a piece of information as I find it. It might take them 2 weeks to fill in all the information, but you're not really in a hurry if you're not doing it at a time of crisis.
Okay, but it sounds like what you're suggesting is that even before people initiate this conversation with their parents, time permitting, that they actually start by sitting down and writing down, what do we need to know?
For sure. And you're going to need a lot to know, because you're needing banking information. You need to know where safety deposit boxes are. They're not always in the same place. You need a lot of information about doctors, health conditions, other situations like that.
Last question. If someone was to say to you, what one piece of advice would you give to someone that was contemplating kind of raising this issue with their parents, what would that be?
I would make sure you get your parents on side. Do not challenge them. They're already challenged by a lot of changes in their life brought on by aging. So you want to respect their dignity. And as soon as you start respecting their dignity, they're really going to work better with you. And also, I like to respect everyone's dignity. I think that's a product of being a human being. So that's a very, very important thing, especially in family dynamics where they're a little threatened by the changing of power structure.
Mary Ellen, thank you very much.
You're welcome.